Hey, you ever have one of those days where you feel like you're just barely keeping it together? The to-do list is a mile long, your inbox is a horror show, and you're pretty sure you're running on caffeine and sheer willpower alone. I know I do. Now, imagine that feeling, but instead of Slack messages and project deadlines, you're managing a fleet of 1,800 pirate ships, 80,000 unruly sailors, and you're being hunted by the combined navies of China, Portugal, and Britain. Suddenly, your Monday doesn't seem so bad, does it? Welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Underworld Kings, the rise and fall from Light Knot Studios. Today, we're sailing into the treacherous waters of the South China Sea in the early 1800s to meet a woman who didn't just break the glass ceiling. She shattered it from the deck of a war junk. This is the story of Madame Ching Shih, the Crimson Pirate, the most successful pirate in human history. To understand her rise, we have to set the scene. It's the dawn of the 19th century. The Qing Dynasty is struggling, European colonial powers are circling, and the South China Sea is a lawless superhighway of trade. And on that highway, banditry wasn't just common, it was an industry. One of the most powerful fleets belonged to a fearsome pirate named Cheng Ai. In 1801, he did something that would change history. He married a former prostitute from Canton. Her name was Shih, and she was fiercely intelligent, strategic, and utterly fearless. This wasn't a marriage of convenience. It was a partnership. She worked by his side, learning the intricate, brutal business of piracy, the alliances, the navigation, the extortion rackets they called protection fees. For 6 years, they built an empire. And then, in 1807, Cheng Ai died. In most criminal organizations, that would be the moment for a bloody power struggle. But Madame Ching, she had a different plan. She stepped into the power vacuum with a clarity that would make any modern CEO weep. She immediately convened a council of the fleet's most powerful captains. And she didn't plead or bargain. She presented a vision. She understood that their strength wasn't just in their cannons, but in their unity. So she consolidated power by bringing the two most important men under her direct influence: her adopted son, Cheng Petsai, and her late husband's right-hand man, Chong Pao. She married Chong Pao, securing his loyalty, and placed Cheng Petsai in a key command position. In one swift move, she neutralized internal threats and cemented her command. But her true genius wasn't just in seizing power, it was in systematizing chaos. She gave her colossal armada something it desperately needed: a code of laws. This wasn't some vague pirate's honor. This was a detailed, ruthlessly enforced constitution. Forbidden to steal from the villages that supplied them. Forbidden to rape female prisoners. Offenders were executed. Forbidden to disobey orders. All loot was registered, cataloged by a fleet treasurer, and taxed. The fleet got 20%, the crew kept the rest. But if you tried to hide booty, death. If you deserted, your ears were cut off, and then you were paraded before the entire fleet as an example. She created a meritocracy. The most daring and successful sailors could rise to command captured ships. She wasn't just running a criminal gang. She was running a corporation, a navy, and a sovereign state, all from the quarterdeck. And business was booming. Her red flag fleet became so dominant, so terrifyingly efficient, that they effectively controlled the coastline of southern China. They levied taxes on every ship, every port town. They defeated the Qing Navy in battle after battle. At the height of her power, Madame Ching, she commanded a force more formidable than most national navies. She was untouchable, a queen of the ocean, and the Qing Dynasty had no idea how to stop her. Which brings us to the true crime core of her story, the cost of this empire. The name Crimson Pirate wasn't just for the red flags on her ships. It was earned. While her code protected some, her violence against those who defied her was legendary and brutal. Whole towns that refused to pay her protection fees were burned. Naval officers who resisted capture were beheaded, their heads displayed on spikes as a warning. The sea lanes ran red, not just with blood, but with the economic lifeblood of a nation. She wasn't a romantic rebel. She was the head of a vast, violent, parasitic syndicate. And the world finally decided it had to respond. The Portuguese, the British, and the desperate Qing government all tried to take her down. And they failed. In a series of spectacular naval engagements, her brilliantly coordinated fleets outmaneuvered and outfought them all. The most powerful empires on Earth could not defeat Madame Ching Shih. So they had to try something else: negotiation. This is where her story diverges from almost every other underworld king we've studied. There is no dramatic fall, no betrayal in a hail of bullets, no last stand. Facing a prolonged blockade, and perhaps seeing the long-term unsustainability of her empire, Madame Ching, she did the most calculated thing imaginable. She decided to retire. In 1810, after 3 years of unprecedented power, she opened negotiations with the Qing authorities. And she negotiated from a position of staggering strength. She didn't surrender, she brokered a deal. The terms were astonishing. Full amnesty for her and every single one of her pirates. They got to keep all their plundered wealth. Her husband, Chang Pao, was given a military commission in the Qing Navy. Over 17,000 pirates came ashore, registered, and were given land or pardons. She herself walked away, scot-free, with her immense fortune intact. Think about that for a second. This woman, who commanded the largest pirate fleet ever assembled, who defied empires, who built a system of law out of lawlessness, simply closed up shop. She returned to Canton, opened a successful gambling house, and lived a long, peaceful life until the age of 69. She died in her bed, a grandmother, a respected business owner, a legend. I find myself reflecting on Madame Ching Shih's story not with admiration for her violence, but with a kind of awe at her sheer operational brilliance. As an engineer and entrepreneur, I can't help but analyze her systems. She took a chaotic, hypermasculine, ego-driven environment and imposed structure, accountability, and incentive. She turned pirates into employees and an armada into a franchise. She understood that sustainable power, even illegal power, requires rules and a shared sense of purpose. And perhaps most stunningly, she understood the most important move in any game: knowing when to cash out. She saw the endgame. While so many crime lords are destroyed by their own greed, their inability to envision a life outside the throne, she walked away on her own terms, trading absolute power for absolute security. In the annals of true crime, she is the ultimate outlier. So what's the takeaway from the Crimson Pirate? It's that the most formidable power isn't always the loudest or the most brutal. Sometimes it's the most organized, the most strategic, the one that can see 3 moves ahead of everyone else. Madame Ching, she wasn't just a pirate. She was a master strategist who played the ultimate game against the world's greatest powers and won. She retired undefeated. Thanks for sailing with me through this incredible tale. If you enjoyed this episode of Underworld Kings, please share it with someone who'd love a good story. For the full archive of episodes, visit our producers at Light Not Studios. That's lightnotstudios.com. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi. Until next time, take care.